So here's what it actually looks like. We would write fewer goals that are scientifically sound and based on proven progress monitoring practices. So for example, in reading, the heavy lifting would be done for a student with a reading problem by a framework where in X number of weeks, typically the anniversary date, the student will read some magic number of words from some graded level passages that would be determined. A simple oral reading test is a scientifically sound way of measuring general reading improvement over time. It works really well, it's cheap, and it doesn't take a lot of time. We can do the same thing in spelling with a short spelling test, or we can do the same thing in mathematics with a short mathematics computation task. We can do the same thing in mathematics problem solving, and we can do the same thing in written expression. These are areas in which we have reasonably either strong or reasonably strong validated tools with which to write goals and monitor progress efficiently over time. I will emphasize reading, since 90% of kids that are receiving special education present reading problems. Okay, so let's talk about how do we set quality goal practices. Okay, if indeed we want to have goals that are have high expectations and can be linked to grade level standards, how would we go about that process? It's pretty simple. There's three important questions that make it easy for everyone. One, we need to know where the student is now, the present level of performance, or PLOP. We need to know that. We need to know more than the student is in 6th grade and is at the first percentile. That tells us the student is discrepant, but it doesn't tell us their present level of performance. We need to judge if the student's present level of performance is significantly discrepant from other kids. What level of performance would we want the student to be at that reduces the performance gap? If indeed we want to have expectations that are high and linked to grade level standards, okay, how would we define that? And then we need to be able to do this, and it's called define the CAP, the criterion for acceptable performance. So when we say this, we want this student to be successful in, say, reading grade 4 or grade 5 or grade 6 material. How do we define reading it well? And that's called the CAP. These are the three questions we ask, and we go about that process. I'll show you an illustration. The goal setting steps are, first, I like to use curriculum-based measurement, like I said, because it's scientifically sound, then it's cheap, and it lends itself to what's called a survey level assessment, where I'm not just comparing a kid to kids in their own grade, I'm actually determining what a student does do successfully, at least on a normative basis. So I'll show you what a survey level assessment is like if you're unfamiliar. I need to know the time frame for the goal. This is easy for kids with disabilities. Almost always, but not exclusively, it is the anniversary date, or 1 year from when the IEP is written. I need to determine the level of curriculum performance, or the CAP, criteria for acceptable performance, that defines success. And to me, if I'm going to be consistent with the Supreme Court ruling that bases the expectations of the goal to be have high expectations, I want to reduce the achievement gap. And that means I need to define the CAP.